You know, one of the little bonuses of being a somewhat successful movie reviewer is the opportunity it provides to connect with other people in the film industry. Like Neil Marshall, for example, the director of Dog Soldiers, one of my all-time favourite movies, who I was lucky enough to interview last year. And recently we hooked up once again on EFAP Movies to do a watch party for one of his other big films, The Descents. And even now, after all these years, I have to admit I was impressed by just how effective a horror movie it actually is, how tight and efficient the script managed to be, and how deceptively smart and nuanced the character development is. So what the hell? Why not give it the recommendation that it deserves? So grab your climbing axe and deceptively unreliable flashlight and let's delve right into this. The film centres around three friends, Sarah, Juno and Beth, who have bonded over their shared love of outdoor adventure. Whitewater rafting, climbing, caving, you name it. They all seem to be getting along pretty well, until a tragic accident results in the death of Sarah's husband and daughter, leaving her devastated and alone. Flash forward a year or so and the girls have reunited at a cabin up in the Appalachian Mountains, along with three other friends that are along for the ride. And pretty quickly you get a good sense of the dynamics and personalities at play in the group. The gung-ho wannabe eager to prove herself, the older and more cautious voice of reason, the ambitious and egocentric leader, and the smart, level-headed adventurer. You also start to pick up little hints that all is not well between them. An air of tension seems to hang around Juno and Sarah, like one knows something the other doesn't. Anyway, their plan is to venture into a nearby cave system, have a few adventures, and hopefully coax Sarah out of her funk. It's a nice idea, but what Juno neglects to tell them is that the cave she picked is completely uncharted, meaning they've got no idea what's down there. And more importantly, if they get into trouble, then nobody's coming for them. And wouldn't you know it, pretty soon they do get into trouble when the tunnel behind them collapses, trapping them deep underground. And if your arsehole doesn't pucker up just a little during the cave-in sequence, then you must be made of sterner stuff than me. Now their only chance of escape is to press forward in the hopes of finding another exit, but as they venture deeper into the cave, they begin to spot evidence of a previous expedition. It seems like they're not the first people to explore this cave, but if so, what happened to their predecessors? It's not long before they realise that they're not alone down here. Someone or something is hunting them. But as the body count rises and personal rivalries come to the surface, can any of them hope to make it out alive? Well, it kinda depends on which version of the movie you happen to watch, but I'll come back to that one later. Now, the idea of a small group of people trapped in an isolated location and under attack by a mysterious threat that slowly causes them to fragment and fall apart as casualties mount isn't exactly a new one. Shit man, Dog Soldiers used the exact same premise to excellent effect, but the thing that marks The Descent out as different is the subtle interpersonal drama that's woven through the gory action and gradually starts to influence the plot more and more. You learn a great deal about the various characters, their relationships, their strengths and weaknesses in the opening 30 minutes, and all of those different facets influence their decisions once they get down into the cave. Their behaviour always stays consistent with who they are, rather than changing to accommodate the needs of the plot, and you'd be surprised how rare that sort of thing actually is these days. There's the young thrill seeker who's eager to win approval, but is more likely to rush ahead rather than stop to consider the possible dangers, and it might just cost her dearly. The fiery and self-centred leader who may get carried away in the heat of the moment, but will she own up to her mistake or try to cover it up for her own benefits? More than most horror movies, The Descent is a smart and compelling character study about human behaviour in the most desperate situations, how far we'll go to stay alive, what kind of people we might turn into when our backs are against the wall. And it's interesting that Marshall chose to go with an all-female cast for a movie like this. We're so used to seeing mixed groups of young couples to help ratchet up the drama, but it's kind of refreshing to take that element out of it. And the script actually strikes a pretty good balance in its portrayal of these women. They're not shallow, invincible girl bosses who can do anything, but they're also not panicky, emotional idiots who run around screaming and make obvious dumb decisions just to get the plot moving along. For the most part, every character in The Descent is intelligent, practical and resourceful. They make logical choices based on what they know, they're experienced and capable adventurers, and they're more than capable of fighting back when the chips are down. And this is another aspect of the film that I really appreciated. The crawlers aren't some invincible, unstoppable force of nature that has the group at their mercy. They can be fought and killed, they're just as frail and vulnerable as the rest of us, and at times the girls are even able to turn the tables on them. The movie takes its time introducing them. The first time you see one is a blink and you'll miss it glimpse off in the distance before it vanishes into the shadows, and there's some great little jump scares when they do finally make their appearance. Their true nature and origins are never explicitly stated. You can make some educated guesses from little hints sprinkled through the narrative, but generally it's up to the audience to decide what these things are and where they come from. And to be honest, I'm just fine with that. I don't need every question to be answered. I said before that the ending you get depends on which version of the movie you're watching, the American or the British one, and it's an interesting little comparison between American filmmakers who favour conventional endings with positive, easy to understand resolutions, and Brits who prefer darker, more ambiguous and thought-provoking conclusions. I mean, personally, my advice is to go with the British version. Believe me, it makes way more sense when you consider what this movie's really trying to say about the nature of loss, grief, trauma and personal tragedy. Either way though, whether you're looking for an interesting character study or a good old-fashioned monster horror, The Descent is the kind of film that'll leave you more than satisfied by the ends. And if somehow you haven't experienced this little gem of a movie, The Drinker recommends you give it a try. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.